Look around your life. You have achieved stability. You maintain control. You avoid conflict. You call it maturity. You call it strength. You believe you have successfully moved past the shame, the fear, the anger, and the betrayal of your past. You tucked the trauma into a remote corner of your mind and locked the door, believing that silence equals healing. But what if that silence is not healing? What if it is a debt accumulating compound interest in the darkest corner of your psyche? Sigmund Freud, the architect of the unconscious, warned that the most dangerous psychological material is not what we forget, but what we actively repress. He called this the seed of neurosis, the condition of psychological distress that arises when the ego expends all its energy fighting its own history. Today, we are exposing the silent disease, the systematic return of the repressed. We will reveal the terrifying consequences when the memories, the unprocessed anger, and the unwept tears you buried for years begin to demand payment. This debt is never settled in cash. It is settled in your relationships, your health, your identity, and your happiness. We will explore how the repressed content, the dark truth you hid from yourself, emerges disguised as anxiety, chronic illness, self-sabotage, and the magnetic attraction to toxic relationships. The force you suppressed for survival is now the force that is preventing you from living. If you believe that what is buried stays buried, prepare to meet the forces in your own shadow that are now returning to collect the ultimate psychological toll. To truly understand the return of the repressed, you must first stop viewing repression as a passive event like casual forgetfulness. Repression is an active, energy-intensive psychological war fought every moment by the ego. The ego, as the sentinel of the conscious mind, must constantly battle the raw, dangerous impulses of the id and the punitive moral condemnation of the superego. When an experience, be it a trauma, a humiliation, or an unacceptable desire, threatens the integrity of the ego's constructed reality, the ego shoves the memory, the associated emotion, and the impulse into the depths of the unconscious. The critical insight from Freud is that the banished memory does not lose its energetic charge. It remains volatile, an active, contained explosion in the dark reservoir. The ego must continually deploy vast amounts of psychic energy, countercathesis, just to keep the lid on this pressure cooker. This ceaseless energy drain is the first, hidden price of repression, leading directly to the depletion of the ego's resources. This leads to a pervasive state of internal stress. Emotional numbness. The ego generalizes its defense, building a thick psychological wall that makes you numb not just to the pain of the past, but equally to present joy, spontaneity, and genuine connection. Chronic cognitive fatigue. Your mind is too preoccupied with its primary task, defending the boundary of the unconscious, to focus fully on tasks in the present. This internal workload manifests as chronic mental fatigue and difficulty concentrating. The vulnerability loop. The continuous expenditure of energy weakens the ego's overall resilience, making it highly vulnerable to external stressors. A minor life event, which a healthy ego could easily handle, becomes the final tipping point that triggers the catastrophic breach. The longer you repress, the weaker your capacity to cope becomes, making the final reckoning more severe.
While Freud focused on the painful contents of personal repression, Carl Jung expanded the concept through the shadow, the psychological opposite of the persona, the idealized mask we show the world. The shadow contains everything we deem weak, evil, shameful, unlovable, or unacceptable about our true selves. When you consistently repress vast portions of your authentic self, creativity, healthy assertiveness, righteous anger, or genuine vulnerability, you inevitably suffer shadow inflation. You become one-sided, a caricature of your conscious self-image. The projection mechanism. The shadow's tremendous energy must be vented. Jung showed it is often projected onto the outside world. The faults and qualities you furiously despise in others, like greed, dishonesty, weakness, are precisely the traits you have repressed and refused to acknowledge in yourself. Your intense, disproportionate hatred for a specific type of person is often the shadow demanding recognition through an external scapegoat. The compensating dream. The unconscious attempts to compensate for the conscious mind's restrictive, one-sided view of reality. If you consciously identify as overly kind and gentle, the unconscious will send aggressive, dark, or violent imagery into your dreams to shock the system and force a psychological balance. The dream is the mind's last attempt to self-correct before the shadow breaks through. The autonomous complex. Ignoring the shadow does not make it weaker, it makes it autonomous. The repressed qualities coalesce into a powerful, independent psychological complex that operates outside the ego's control. This complex can possess the individual during moments of stress, leading to inexplicable outbursts or behaviors completely inconsistent with their conscious identity. The debt is the loss of your authentic, integrated self. The body refuses to be complicit in the mind's deception. As Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's research profoundly reveals, the body literally keeps the score. When trauma or intense emotion, fear, rage, helplessness occurs, the nervous system enters a state of fight, flight, or freeze. If the ego represses the emotional experience, the energy of the alarm system gets biologically stuck. The cognitive mind says it's in the past, but the emotional brain remains perpetually stuck in a state of alarm, running a continuous, low-grade survival program. Psychosomatic disease. The blocked emotional energy manifests as physical illness. Repressed anger, which is frozen energy of thanatos blocked from outward expression, can cause migraines, chronic muscle tension, back pain, or digestive disorders. Chronic cortisol and adrenaline release due to repressed stress lead to persistent sympathetic nervous system activity, increasing the risk of hypertension, cardiovascular issues, and generalized chronic inflammation. Hypervigilance and physical numbing. The body's constant readiness for battle translates to hypervigilance, an exhausting process of scanning the environment for threats. Conversely, the individual may rely on physical numbing, an inability to feel certain areas of the body or disconnect from physical discomfort as a defensive strategy against the unbearable sensations of the trapped trauma. The unexpressed scream, the physical symptom, the clenching jaw, the knot in the stomach, the recurring tremor, is the body's final, desperate, and honest attempt to express the fear or rage that the conscious mind has forbidden. The debt collector has arrived in the form of physical distress, forcing the mind to acknowledge a reality it tried to suppress. The body refuses to be complicit in the mind's deception. As Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's research profoundly reveals, the body literally keeps the score. When trauma or intense emotion, fear, rage, helplessness occurs. The nervous system enters a state of fight, flight, or freeze. If the ego represses the emotional experience, the energy of the alarm system gets biologically stuck. The cognitive mind says it's in the past, but the emotional brain remains perpetually stuck in a state of alarm, running a continuous, low-grade survival program. Psychosomatic disease. The blocked emotional energy manifests as physical illness. Repressed anger, which is frozen energy of thanatos blocked from outward expression, can cause migraines, chronic muscle tension, back pain, or digestive disorders. Chronic cortisol and adrenaline release due to repressed stress lead to persistent sympathetic nervous system activity, increasing the risk of hypertension, cardiovascular issues, and generalized chronic inflammation. Hypervigilance and physical numbing. The body's constant readiness for battle translates to hypervigilance, an exhausting process of scanning the environment for threats. Conversely, the individual may rely on physical numbing, an inability to feel certain areas of the body or disconnect from physical discomfort as a defensive strategy against the unbearable sensations of the trapped trauma. The unexpressed scream. The physical symptom, the clenching jaw, the knot in the stomach, the recurring tremor, is the body's final, desperate, and honest attempt to express the fear or rage that the conscious mind has forbidden. The debt collector has arrived in the form of physical distress, forcing the mind to acknowledge a reality it tried to suppress. The most common and immediate form of the debt collector is the sudden, terrifying onset of generalized anxiety, panic attacks, or displaced rage. These events are not random. They are the result of the ego finally losing the battle against the sheer pressure of the repressed material. Panic as breakthrough. A panic attack is the original unprocessed fear of the past event flooding the system in the present. It feels like a heart attack, but it is actually the nervous system reacting to an internal, historical threat, not an external, current one. It is the repressed terror breaking through the dam. Anxiety as hypervigilance. Chronic anxiety is the hyperactive defense system. The ego is always scanning for threat because the most dangerous threat is believed to be inside you. This constant scanning ensures you focus on an imagined future threat, what if, so you don't have to face the real historical threat buried within, what happened. Displaced rage. Repressed anger from childhood or past betrayal cannot be safely expressed, so it is displaced onto safe targets or trivial irritations in the present. A minor inconvenience, a spilled coffee, traffic, triggers an explosive, disproportionate rage that is actually the full force of the repressed historical anger finally escaping. Repression is deeply linked to an overwhelming sense of guilt, shame, or moral unacceptability dictated by the superego. But the suppressed material returns disguised as calculated self-punishment. The inner tyrant. The superego acts as the inner tyrant, dictating that you are fundamentally unworthy of success or happiness due to the past event or the unacceptable feelings it generated. Calculated self-sabotage. The ego unconsciously arranges for you to fail precisely when success is within reach. You miss the critical deadline, you destroy the successful relationship, or you ruin the interview. This is not incompetence. This is the superego enforcing the debt through failure. The failure temporarily satisfies the superego's relentless demand for retribution, bringing a perverse sense of relief. The symptom as penance. Some individuals develop neuroses where the symptom itself is a form of self-punishment. the chronic pain, the social isolation, the continuous financial ruin. These are unconscious arrangements designed to ensure the individual pays the price for the repressed sin. This rigidity crushes joy, spontaneity, and the capacity for authentic living.
When the repressed material is too terrifying and the ego's defenses are insufficient, the mind utilizes dissociation, a profound psychological detachment. This is the ultimate defensive payment against the debt. Emotional numbing. You find yourself unable to feel strong emotions, experiencing life as muted or dull. This numbness is a protective blanket against the anticipated intensity of the trauma that resides just beneath the surface. You sacrifice the capacity for joy in order to avoid the capacity for pain. Depersonalization or derealization. You feel detached from your own body, depersonalization, or feel that the world around you is unreal or distorted, derealization. These symptoms are the mind trying to check out of reality because the reality of the internal debt is too overwhelming. The mind prefers the abstract safety of the unreal over the terrifying truth of the internal past. Memory gaps, the fog. The mind selectively blocks access to specific periods or events, creating a fog or difficulty concentrating. This effort to maintain the memory gaps siphons off massive cognitive resources, which manifests as a persistent lack of focus and mental clarity in your daily life.
The explosive energy of the repressed trauma demands release, but the ego forbids conscious processing. This contained energy finds its outlet in behavioral addictions and substance abuse, a momentary false relief from the psychic pressure. The addiction is a substitute symptom for the neurosis. The compulsion, alcohol, excessive spending, compulsive eating, destructive relationship cycles serves multiple unconscious functions. Numb the pain. It temporarily shuts down the hyperactive emotional alarm system triggered by the constant presence of the repressed memories. Satisfy the id. It provides an immediate, raw form of gratification to the id, momentarily distracting it from the core conflict and the pain of delayed gratification. Repeat the trauma, compulsion. Often, the addictive cycle itself is a subconscious repetition of the trauma dynamic: loss of control, shame, self-neglect, ironically keeping the person stuck in the same emotional landscape they are trying to escape. Self-medication. It is the desperate, unconscious attempt to re-regulate a nervous system that is perpetually dysregulated by the unaddressed, repressed content. The addiction becomes a new, visible prison built to contain the invisible, repressed pain, creating a new layer of self-sabotage. If the repressed material is not merely personal, but also violates the collective norms, Jung suggested the unconscious pressure can activate powerful archetypes. When the shadow is too large, it can lead to archetypal possession or inflation, a state where the ego is swallowed by a complex. The personas collapse. If your persona is too perfect and too rigid, the good child, the perfect professional, the repressed contents can burst through in an overwhelming, chaotic manner. The sudden, extreme personality change is the repressed archetypal energy, the rebel, the destroyer, taking over the conscious ego, often leading to a complete self-destruction or crisis of identity. The demonization of others. The repressed collective fear, or the dark side of an archetype, can be projected onto a group or an ideology, leading to moral outrage, rigidity, and fanaticism. This is the collective shadow at work, demanding that the individual fight the evil outside,
because they cannot face the disowned evil inside. The false prophet. Repression of positive traits like assertiveness, power, or sexuality can lead to positive inflation, where the individual identifies with an overly grandiose archetype, the hero, the savior. They become arrogant, lose touch with reality, and their grandiosity inevitably leads to a massive public failure.
The breakthrough of the repressed material is terrifying, but ultimately necessary. It is the moment the neurosis reaches its crisis point and the ego can no longer maintain the illusion. This breakthrough often happens during times of great stress, profound loss, a marriage, a job, or any major challenge to the ego ideal. The old defenses stop working. The symptom as a messenger. The symptom, panic, rage, chronic pain, is not the enemy, it is the messenger. It is the unconscious telling the ego, the old method of coping is killing you. You must look here. The symptom is demanding to be seen. The process of mourning. Healing begins when the ego stops fighting the pain and begins the process of mourning the original trauma or loss. This involves consciously feeling the emotions that were forbidden decades ago, the original helplessness, the infantile rage, the profound sadness. The emotions must be fully experienced and processed in the present. Relief through acknowledgement. The greatest relief does not come from eliminating the memory, but from acknowledging the emotional truth of the experience. Giving voice and conscious narrative to the repressed feeling through therapy, art, or journaling drains the pressure and begins the process of integrating the experience into the adult psyche.
The ultimate goal of facing the debt is not to become perfect or trauma-free, but to achieve integration. To make the unconscious conscious and allow the ego to govern based on reality, not repression. The integrated ego is not stronger because it suppresses more. It is stronger because it contains more truth. It can hold the complexity of your past, your dark impulses, and your highest ideals simultaneously. Your action plan for emotional sovereignty. Map your symptoms. Identify where the repressed energy is manifesting. Is it chronic pain, anxious attachment, fear of abandonment, addiction, numbing? Your symptom is the starting point of the debt collection. Challenge the superego. Question the moral law that forced the repression. Was the shame justified? Was the anger truly bad? Redefine your moral code based on your adult, conscious values, not the punitive, internalized voices of the past. Befriend the shadow. Instead of projecting, acknowledge the repressed quality in yourself. If you hate aggressive people, find the repressed, healthy assertiveness within you and integrate it constructively. This is the path to conscious personal power. Somatic listening. Utilize somatic techniques, mindful movement, deep breathing, body awareness, to bring the body's stored trauma back into conscious awareness. Allow the physical sensation of fear or anger to exist without immediately intellectualizing or suppressing it. The new ego. The new ego is the ultimate mediator. It can acknowledge the id's desire, tolerate the superego's judgment, and choose a conscious reality-based response. The debt has been called in. The only way to settle the account is to stop running from your own history. Your true strength lies not in the silence you keep, but in the truth you choose to integrate. If this analysis of the silent disease has illuminated the hidden battle in your own life, share your thoughts below. Subscribe to Your Surreal to continue the journey into the sovereign self.